bodies were quick in providing additional food rations, while Good Samaritans across India fed thousands upon thousands with pre-cooked meals. One such campaign has been Chef Vikas Khanna's Feed India initiative, which has helped provide 30 million meals to people in more than 100 cities across India. The initiative has received wide-ranging support from volunteers, philanthropists, corporate giants, and government bodies in India and abroad. Today's conversation will discuss this initiative in detail. We're really delighted to host Chef Vikas Khanna and acclaimed food critic, my old friend, Vir Sanghvi, for this conversation. Allow me to introduce our esteemed speakers this evening. Vikas Khanna is an internationally acclaimed Indian-American chef, filmmaker, and author. He is a James Beard nominee and one of the first Indian chefs to be awarded a Michelin star in the US. Mr. Khanna has been featured amongst the 10 most influential chefs in the world by Deutsche Welle and the Gazette Review. Vir Sanghvi is a columnist and a broadcaster and an author. His journalistic career includes stints as an editor of Bombay, Imprint, Sunday, before taking over at the Hindustan Times, where he was first editor and then editorial director. Mr. Sanghvi's television career includes anchoring numerous award-winning shows across the networks, of which the most recent is Virtuosity on CNN News 18. One more minute of your time, ladies and gentlemen, for a little bit of housekeeping. All those who are joining us on Zoom, please leave your questions in the Q&A box and not in the chat box. And for our audience on Facebook, please drop them in the comments section. I would now like to invite, with great pleasure, Vir to commence the discussion. Enjoy the evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Over to you, Vir.
Thank you, Pheroza. I think I speak for Vikas as well as myself when I say we are both honored to be here. It's a great pleasure to be here and it's a privilege. And thank you so much for inviting us. Before we go any further, let me just explain a little bit about what we're going to talk. I can talk to Vikas Khanna for hours and hours and hours because there's so much to say. But in my experience, the best talks are the ones that are narrowly focused. So I'll try as much as possible to talk about this period and to talk about what's been happening to Vikas during the pandemic. Hi, Vikas, are you there? I'm not sure I can see you.
Hi.
You here? Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can now see you. Great. Let's start with the obvious question. You are one of the world's most influential chefs. You're one of the first Indian chefs to get a Michelin star in the US. You are a huge, huge celebrity in India, thanks to your television appearances. And you've also been on lists of the hottest men alive. So when you take all of that, the two questions that immediately come to mind. One is, why are you making so many award-winning films? We'll deal with that later. And the second and obvious one, how did Feed India, how did this initiative come about?
So Feed India started on April 1st, but we did very small stuff like, I went online and asked people on Twitter that if they can look into the neighborhoods for orphanages, old age homes, and leprosy centers, if they need any kind of food, because it was also the month end. India was in lockdown for more than a week. And we also understand that, many of these places, their kitchens run monthly basis on donations. So it struck us that, it's not going to be easy because many of these places are actually based on people visiting these centers. We started something, but April 11th was very significant in this journey because, first of all, I did a live chat with you on that day. And that was actually my last live chat, literally.
I know. You've actually done nothing. I think there's been one brief thing on CNN and just this, which is why we are so honored and privileged that you've agreed to do this.
I did a BBC thing which didn't go too well, but I was like,
okay, I didn't see that.
Because somehow in the Western world they just focus on that you come from such modest background, so you must be so hunger struck. And I have to keep correcting people, telling them to I come from Amritsar, and we have rituals in which we don't let anyone sleep hungry. There's free food, shelter for everyone, and that's a model which has been followed wherever the Sikhs have been in the world.
Exactly.
But I feel that this was very important because with you, I can open up myself much more honestly and without any filters. And on April 11th, when I called my mom, I had just had a very bad incident near Bangalore where somebody just disappeared with a food truck. We had bought rations, which was rice, and it was lentils, I think, just lentils. Lentils we bought lesser as compared to rice because it's cheaper. And somebody just disappeared with the truck. And I called my mom in the morning before our call and I said, Mom, I can't do this because this is not making any sense. I'm too far and I don't have control over things, and I feel that this cannot work. And my mom got so upset with me. I don't know what happened, that I think she was having a bad day, literally. And she said that, this entire country has contributed to your success and we've celebrated everything. Every time you failed, we cried. And every time you were successful, it was a mutual success for the entire country. And just remember, I haven't given birth to you so that you can do Instagrams. And like, I don't know what happened to her. She's saying, I've given birth to a warrior and you need to stand here and feed India. And she says, you're not doing any favor to anyone. This is your duty. And there's no one else who's more trained, who can ever run this campaign. And since that day, I have done nothing else. And even tonight, I think today I slept early in the morning because of this call to try to look fresh, because we are still doing a lot of food deliveries in different parts of rural India.
Vikas, apparently it was your mom's birthday yesterday. Is that correct?
It was her birthday yesterday.
Okay, let's all wish her, even if it's a day late. And it was your birthday not so long ago, right?
Yeah, both Scorpions.
Yeah, that's right. So, okay, but there must have been a moment when you woke up and said you were going to do this, because I remember reading and hearing that you were doing this. And my first thought was, I know Vikas will want to do it, but he is stuck in New York. He has very bad asthma. They will not let him fly during this pandemic. How will he manage to do it out of New York? Didn't that worry you?
Everything was a failure in the beginning. Everything was just collapsing. We would commit to people that, we are sending food to them because we decided that we must divide this in a very organized way. If I was in my living room, you will see that the entire walls are filled up with paper charts trying to organize cities. And I gave 4-digit code to every city because, cities have sometimes different spellings. So we didn't want to waste a single second on it. And every time you'll put that code in this program, you will see that who are our contacts. But it was very difficult. In the beginning, it was very difficult. And then we got blessed because of Twitter that Mr. Satya from NDRF, National Disaster Response Force, they came on board. And they said, we understand that your forte will be securing the dry goods or cooked meals and then getting them delivered to the people who need it. But we will be the ones who will do the entire operations of delivering this from point A to point B. And that was a big problem because on the lockdowns, if people remember, it was so difficult just getting someone to commit to something.
But what made you do it? You still, I know you're very modest about it, but there must have been a moment when you said, I can't just sit here, I need to do something. When did that happen?
I think the news which was coming from India at that time was very heartbreaking. And if a chef is not broken by hunger, then there's no other reason for us to be in this industry. At that time, everything was sinking, all the hospitality, but that's just looking the images which were coming to us, all of us, we were watching, and it made me shiver sometimes, saying that this is one of the worst pandemics we've seen, not just because of the virus, but also because the after effects it's creating. And that is something which was breaking our hearts. And it was all about the imagery for me. Every time I'll see something, we said we need to act on it. We just can't be sitting and understanding that, from the place I come from, there was also a little guilt, I'll be honest.
Guilt about what?
Guilt about such a privilege which has been given to me by the universe. And some people don't accept it, but I totally accepted that, to have this kind of voice, to have this kind of, not influence, but had this kind of journey. But I felt that it was very important for me to continue that.
But, this is a slightly cynical question, but I remember our last conversation. You were in New York at the worst time in the pandemic. New York was really closing down. You had friends who were in hospital. There were people dying. It was really the worst. I don't think New York has ever seen a worse time since 1919 or so. You could have, you're a very well-known chef in America. You go to the White House. You're a celebrity chef. You could have just done charitable things in New York because there was a need for that. You could have helped people. Instead, your thoughts went back home, went back to India. I mean, it's not to say you didn't do enough in New York, but it's very hard for us to understand how somebody who is, as you said, of such privilege and such celebrity, so many miles away, thinks about some hungry villager in India living in Manhattan. How does that happen?
I think it was relatability. And it was also my mom who kept sending me articles and imagery. And every time she's watching the news, it will break her heart. And she kept telling me that, see what's happening here. And she was like, almost like, I won't say that, she was the entire creator of this path, but she was an inspiration for me to understand that, there was such a strong empathy at that time, because that this is not permanent. We also understood that this is because of the circumstances that people are walking thousands of miles back home, and there's nothing on the way what they can get. So everything was happening in such a dominoes effect, because such things, you're right, comes from a very broken heart. And I think the greatest form of arts and even the biggest food drives, and some of the images have stuck in my mind. It was very, very stuck in my mind that, and that is what was telling me that, we could have done this. We could have done this. We could have done the trains. We could have done the platforms. Yeah. We could have done the people where the quarantine centers were. We could have got the food there. Why didn't we do that? And I felt that, but why am I sitting and complaining? We can do it now. There is still going to be demand for this. And so we should not stop. But also there were a lot of people who joined hands with us after the New York Times cover story worldwide. Mr. Sanghvi, it was such an influx of international companies which came on board and said that we want to support this mission. I think that one single article did that entire thing into a catalyst effect, where they had this image of the man who's actually having food. It was, I think, near R, and the tears were coming out of his eyes. And that image was so like aspiration for me that, we need to reach more people. And I think that time and we didn't do any crowdfunding. We did not do, and we just said that big companies who came on board, because, it's a very big financial game, which we were doing.
Yeah.
That big companies who came on board, we said, all I can commit to you is I'll post about you on social media. I cannot commit anything right now. And if you want to come forward and you want to support the country or right now, and it was surprising that how many people came forward.
Really? And you did nothing? You just told them, if you help us, we will post about you, and that's it. Nothing more than that. Nobody else will.
Right. Many people were writing to us too. After the Times article, people started there was an influx because, everything was coming to me on emails. So first of all, the biggest issue was I had to change my time clock. Yeah. I had to totally organize myself that I'm going to sleep at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in New York and wake up at 6 o'clock in the evening. And I need to change my clock because I was getting tense, I was getting frustrated, and I was getting very angry because I didn't have any sleep patterns. So that is also, and I'm a very severe asthmatic. For me, I have to sleep, whatever happens, So everybody should sleep actually. But that was all the challenges came at the same time. And it was like everything was against us, setting us up for failure. And I think that is the time I perform the best, when I'm set up for failure.
But, I think anybody who knows you will attest to this. You're essentially a very emotional man. You always act from the heart. Anything happens around you, you see anybody's sadness, you're a sensitive person, you get tearful. What was it like coping with so much heartbreak, seeing so much misery, having to deal with that?
think it was in Hyderabad. And, you know, many times we will have the food deliveries in places which were very isolated at that time. And there was somebody, one of the officers said, they want to do a video call with you. Can you call you? I said, okay, it's like almost like 4 o'clock in the night. I said, yeah. So I'm doing a video call with this lady, and on the phone, I did not understand what she was speaking her native language, and she kept blessing me. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't even understand what are we trying to do? At that point, our scales were still small. But I think on May 31st, we just broke everything. On May 31st, we fed more than 500,000 people, dried, ration, and cooked meals on the highways. There were so many abandoned parents' homes or abandoned elders, which were getting to our attention that, you know, we are taking care of them. Can you please support with the food? So many leprosy centers, orphanages. That single day was like, it was like such a big, it was like running like 10 Michelin star restaurants where everything has to be precise and there's no room for any mistakes. You need to organize the entire thing. And that is what happened to us, that we kept organizing the entire thing, that we need to run this food drive like nobody has seen this kind of organizational structures before.
How did you manage? How do you know how to do this? You've been a chef, and that involves a degree of management of a brigade, but that's about it. There's never been any evidence in your career that you have these massive organizational skills. How did that come to you?
You know, I used to do a lot of, you know, we also have a short-lived memory about things, but when tsunami happened in 2004, it really broke my heart. And Mr. Sanghvi, this happened on 24th of December, I guess, 2004. And on 2nd February, I organized one of the biggest events in 2005 in Manhattan. I got 20 biggest chefs of this country. And I told them that you need to bring one signature dish and we're going to give you a counter. I went to them and I said, you know, my country is injured right now. We need to figure out what to do with this. And I called Save the Children, Habitat for Humanity. I said, I'm doing this big event. And they said, where are you doing it? Because I'm not a very organized person in my structure. I need to keep working and I find things will fall into place. I hosted one of the biggest events in Manhattan at Tribeca Rooftop on February 5th, 2005. And we raised more than $50-something thousand single-handedly. And we got Alan Ducasse to Daniel to John George. Everybody came, wow. Or they sent the chefs. And this was and then after that Gulf Coast event happened, the whole hurricanes were happening in 2006. I had to organize one of the largest food events exactly on the same format. We will get top 20 chefs of America and we'll ask them, we'll give them a counter, bring your signature dish. We sell tickets and people come in and they have this tasting around. We call the celebrities, we call entertainers, we call auctions for art. I've been doing those things for such a long time, but nothing which was remote like this, nothing like that.
Yeah, but you know, I don't want to belittle what you've achieved. It's huge to organize a charity dinner with Ducasse and Daniel Boulou and all of that. On the other hand, it's at least in New York, it's a milieu you're familiar with. But here you're dealing with people in Hyderabad, you gave an example, who don't even speak a language that you speak. This is much more massive in scope than anything, as far as I know, any chef anywhere in the world has ever tried. I mean, people like Massimo Bottura run soup kitchens, which is very laudable and creditable. But these are things during Haiti, one or two the earthquake, one or two American chefs, also to think Jose Andres and people like that. But this is completely different. Just the scale of what you did and the fact that you were able to do it from so many thousands of miles away. It is a considerable achievement, isn't it? Don't be modest.
I'm very proud. I'm very proud. And every time, you know, I also had a very emotional breakdown because when we couldn't keep the promises, we couldn't keep the promises so many times. And, you know, we said, you know, we should buy the grains from the farmers because first of all, it's going to be very genuine. It's going to support them directly. But dealing with farmers from here was also tough because many times we couldn't get them payments. And, you know, they did not have a set up system where they can sell directly. They always had vendors around them. And getting those things picked up from them and bringing to one single point and then understanding the distribution network, it was difficult. But I think that the most challenging event which we did was for Haji Ali for Eid. So we got brands like Paytm, we got India Gate, we got all these big brands, New Skin from America, and we got, you know, Tariq Karim Boy. These are all the people who just said, we are going to support you. PNG came on board because I wrote a very nasty tweet because, I was buying sanitary pads and I thought the sanitary pads should be a part of essential kits, which we're giving out to people. And someone just threw away the sanitary pads. And because of him, they said, no, we are not going to take this. And the officer who's distributing the food kits is also handing over with sanitary. And the guy said, the chef is buying this from women who make this. And, this is a lot of money for him.
Yeah.
And I sent a tweet that, guys, please help us please do this. Just give it to your mom or sister-in-law or a wife. They will know exactly what to do. Please, this is the time we need to put sanitary pads into these kids. And you won't believe, Mr. Sanghvi, after the tweet, within few hours, we had 9 India, which is a sanitary pad company, India-based, PNG. Everybody came on board and said, we will donate you, just tell us the number. So it was just, everything was so connected with whatever that we were doing. But, also it was very frustrating at some times, but I figured out that the only way we can run this is keep going. Don't get affected by the failures and don't dance when it's success. I'm a very big Shah Rukh Khan fan and A.R. Rahman fan. So every time we'll have a successful delivery, I'll put Chaiya Chaiya. And I was like, oh, this is an achievement. But, things were happening in such massive scale. And, when the Delhi event happened, Barka, this was to support transgender people living with AIDS and, people, sex workers. And this was a massive event which was taking place in Ghaziabad. And we had the prayers with Lakshmi Narayan Tripathi because every time we had a big distribution, we had prayer ceremony for the food. And she was doing this prayer. And I'm watching everything on video and trying to manage this. And a huge storm came, like never seen anything like that before. And she's standing in the middle, her sari is flying everywhere. She has her hands joined and the camera is on her. I felt that the universe really wants me to be successful in this. There were such moments which I'm never going to get out of my head.
There must have been emotionally depressing and breakdown moments as well, right?
A lot of them. I think the train thing where we saw a little toddler and the mother had passed away, who was on the station, that pushed me so hard. That pushed me so hard. I can't tell you that it gave shivers to me at that time because, and within, you will not believe it, I got the news in the evening in New York, and within 8 hours, we had organized 7 train stations with food. But the only food we could get to them was bananas and puris. Because we spoke to local gurdwaras. We said, if you can help us, we will deliver all this, whatever, in the trains. So NDRF team came on board, CRPF team came in Bihar on board, and they went inside. Every time the train would stop, the train is not going to move. And I'm on the video calls and I'm saying, don't let the train move till you've given everybody the food, because I could see the hands coming out of the windows. And so these guys are like running like, oh my God. It was something, I've never experienced this kind of roller coaster ride of emotions. And this is the first time I'm talking about it because how this was affecting me. And the officers, I said, don't forget about this video call. I don't need to see anything. You run, take the food before the train starts. Everybody should have food. And we could do it. And this was something. And the guy then messaged me, Chef, please don't get so anxious about this, because the train station just saw you crying on video call and said, the train is not going to move till everybody's being fed. This is one of the train stops in Bihar. And because of these amazing people who were, and that image was heartbreaking when the hands were coming out of the windows and the doors were not open. And they could give them the food, everybody on these trains. And I don't know what happened. I don't know, something was shifting in me. Something was shifting. And
in a way, during this crisis, you saw the worst of India. The prejudice, the inefficiency, the bureaucracy, sometimes the unreliability. But you also saw the best of India, no? People coming out to help you.
I've never seen India from that lens ever. Never. When we were doing the Haji Ali event, it was like we were doing, I've spoken very much openly about me in Bombay during the riots. And, I have a woman who rescued me. And she gave me shelter in a house. So I said, Eid has to be the biggest Eid in Bombay. And suddenly we had all these sponsors and we were speaking to the people who were running this at Haji Ali. They said, listen, There will be food counters everywhere at Haji Ali. People can come and without any questions who they are, what their backdrop is, we're going to start giving them food. And you're going to see in those visuals, it was 250,000 meals. And you see the godowns are packed with food and everything. And, I must thank this girl who's really helped me put together. She's Manisha Singh from Maximum Collabs. She hasn't slept like me, and she was organizing these big events. And to see that generosity of people who were there just to volunteer, I've never seen that before. I saw a few things which are going to stick with me for the rest of my life. Maybe that is what God wanted me to go through, to reboot my moral compass about these things. And to be creating all these big events was amazing. And how many people came to, and there was times when we had more volunteers to help us than actually we needed. So which was amazing. Robin Hood Army came on board, 24 hours available. Really? Which was like, these guys were young kids who said, chef, just give us the instructions, what has to be done. And we're going to find a way to do that. And this was something which was very, I don't know how to express my gratitude about this.
I think all of us have to express gratitude to you also, because the pandemic is terrible. It's a medical tragedy, and hats off to the doctors who've done their best to fight it. But what people often don't realize, that in India, we had a second tragedy, and that was the tragedy of migrants, millions of migrants who walked home, of hungry people, of people who had no shelter. And there, all of us, you didn't have to be a doctor, all of us could have stepped in and done something to help. And you're, I think, probably the leader in terms of an ordinary citizen who, just because he felt he had an obligation, a duty to those less fortunate, you really stepped up.
I think we also had to be very creative, Mr. Sanghvi. We had to be very creative in doing this. So when we saw the migrants walking, and I think it was Barkha Dutt's interview, I was watching her very closely, what she was, and in the backdrop, I saw a gas station. That is where I got the idea. Let's turn the fuel stations into food stations. And Mr. Nikhil Zanwar, he's the one who was heading this part of it. So within almost in 7 days, we took over almost 100 gas stations on the highways where we started making khichdi. And we realized that it was also getting hotter. We also need to get slippers, because there was an image of a girl who came to get the food for her mother, and she was 9 years old and she was barefoot. And we said, we need to get slippers. So that was everything was leading to something. And we realized that if you put dal in khichdi because of protein, it also got spoiled faster. So we said, okay, let's do rice khichdis and let's get this. So Dawat came on board for this and said, we will provide you rice in any gas station you want.
Really?
And just that one imagery of the gas station, because it said people should be able to get water. And there was also a facility which the guys were arranging, that they could call a doctor for some support to ask questions. And there was sanitary pads and there was food on the gas stations, which was amazing, because everybody knows a gas station on a highway, that if they go there, there's a possibility that there will be food which will be served to them. And those images, if you see, of lines of people standing at gas stations. And I just thank those people, volunteers who came forward to cook this every single day. Sometimes 3 or 4 times a day, they were cooking this.
Many people who know that I'm your friend have said to me, Vikas Khanna is doing so much, but he's not putting himself forward. He's refusing interviews. He's just doing this. Why is he doing it? What's in it for him? Is there something special? And I said, there is no one answer to that question other than the basic thing. He's just a very good human being.
I think I was absorbing the nature at that time, what the universe was happening, and it was crushing. And also I was understanding that, how some of my friends were so affected by this. I'm not talking just physically, but mentally. Right now, I'm seeing a lot of people struggling. And a part of this was that I need to get my brain off the pain. I need to get my brain off the pain. And I finished 2 books during this pandemic. So I was also disciplining myself that I stay so focused that I don't get distracted by pain. And my mom was alone in Amritsar. That was also crushing me. She's there. And then later my brother came from Gurgaon with his family to my mom. But it was also crushing me every time talking to her, because she was only watching news and it was affecting her. And in turn, it was affecting me so deeply that I said, let's keep going. Whatever we need to do, we cannot have this. There was a chance that, I could just be putting up cooking things on Instagram and everything. I said, no, there might be a bigger purpose that why I was given this position. And I'm honest about this, that, it took a lot of, and some people told me, saying, you got status, which is on scale of 100 to 10, above 1 to 10 on one, and we want, but the way you use it and the way you expand it, you make it 100 out of 10. And I'm like, it's like the way I was pushing the card every single day, writing to people, shamelessly asking for support. That is what really helped us to put this in place.
Yeah. Has it changed you think, as a person, this whole experience?
Yes.
Yeah.
Every single day. Not for better or worse, but for something which is very deeply affected. Because I was also being very in touch with the people who were actually doing the work on ground. I was very much in touch with them. So few things were very motivating, but few things are very depressing. But I did not let that affect my mental health, because I'm such a person who I have decided, because I'm an absolutely from head to toe self-made person, and I put that in quotes, that I figured out that the way people were so resilient in this time, that there's so much to learn from them. Those kids who were walking, and the kids who were on these little carts, who were taking their parents to the villages, and this girl who's riding a bicycle taking her father, and this little woman who's like in her 90s, and she's giving idli for 1 rupee, and there's somebody, Shardaji, who's giving a dosa for 10, like 2 dosas for 10 rupees, and there were people who were putting langars outside their houses. You look at the resources they had and the way they were sharing, something for us to learn.
A lot to learn, no, from the resilience of Indians.
It's a lot to learn, because people were becoming so self-reliant that, right now we need to step in and we need to support as much as we can. And look at the opportunities or the provisions or the kind of abilities they had, but look what they tried to do out of it, which was phenomenal. Hats off, really hats off, what the people have been able to do this. We saw the worst and the best of mankind.
We're nearly at the end of our time before I allow a few questions, but I need to ask you this, because that struck me as being very extraordinary about you as a human being, that in the middle of these emotional moments, the trauma, the hard work, the heartache, you kept working. You mentioned in passing that you wrote 2 books during this period. You also managed to open a restaurant remotely in Dubai. How did you manage all that?
I wrote 2 cookbooks and 1 novel.
A novel?
A novel. And I wrote a children's book. So we did 4 books during this time. We did post-production of a big feature film. We did 2 documentaries during this time. And we actually shot 1 short film in New York during the pandemic. During the pandemic, I'd written a short story in 2004. And I turned that whole thing, it's about a firefighter who's American. It's about, so we were working constantly. From morning to night, we were working, because that was the only way I could get my brain off the pain. And we opened Ellora.
Yeah, how could you open Ellora? You were sitting in New York, you were full of all this, you were making films. How did you manage to open a restaurant in faraway Dubai?
And our main chef is Ashish, and Ashish is quite brilliant, and his team, Sukesh. And on Zoom call, 24 hours, we were doing testings of new dishes. We were doing menus. We were setting up the place. Everything was done on Zoom calls. And of course, understanding the government protocols about opening a restaurant, we said, when Dubai opens up and we have the place to open. So this was JA Beach Resort,
yeah,
which you have to visit. It's a beautiful restaurant. And these guys were the ones who were forefront there. And we said, let's keep the menu shorter, because we will not have so much of staff and everything. But we will also be talking about employment. We're also talking about reviving businesses. We're also talking about energy, which the leaders have to be transcending as we are moving forward in this game. That to change the hospitality industry, and we know how badly it's been hit. For us, this is a real test of leadership, because because when we were discussing the opening of the restaurant during this pandemic, and it opened on August 14th at like 12 o'clock New York time. So it was almost like 15th August. I said, this is very important for us to keep going, putting in new energy. And because a lot of people would be looking at you and who will be like now saying that, look, this is an impossible journey for me from here on. And you stand there and says, it's not impossible. It's just a bad turn and we should not deny it, but this is not impossible. The only way we can surpass this is we stay positive. We keep finding creative ways to support each other at this time. And the leaders cannot just give up and give energy of failure. We need to always be representing success and resilience. Not fake success, I'm talking about. But the restaurant was packed even when it opened, which was amazing because, but it was a very tough time for most, it's the most tough time for most of the chefs. But I keep telling the chefs that, you have to understand when you look at me, I have endured much tougher times than this also. In 2008, when the market fell off in America, everything fell off as dominoes effect. I had such a successful catering business in US. I had a restaurant on Times Square and I had an amazing cooking school. So every Monday we'll have packed classes, but I was still making a lot of money. Everything broke. Everything just got crushed. It's for us how fast we get up again. That's very important. And that's going to happen to every chef. It's going to happen to every artist that, there is an artist and then there's a predator. Just think about this, that this energy, what's coming from us, this pandemic, is like the predator and we have to succeed.
Because in your life, there have been many highs. Let me go through some of them. You got a Michelin star, which is an enormous deal because you got it in New York, where Indian restaurant. At the moment, I don't think there's a single Michelin-starred Indian restaurant in New York. They're not generally, Michelin is not kind to Indian chefs. And yet you got this at a very young age. Then you became a huge TV personality with MasterChef and Twist of Taste all over India. Then you became, oddly enough, bizarrely, we'll have to talk about another time, an award-winning film director. Nobody even knew that you had it in you to make films, and you made films that were taken to film festivals and won awards. And now you've done this. You've shown us all how an individual can make a difference, how it is possible for an ordinary human being, if he puts his mind to it, to help those less fortunate. Of these, it's hard for you to order them, but which one do you think is your biggest achievement as a human being?
I think everything is connected, Mr. Sanghvi. I use success of one part to uplift the other part. I fail a lot, but I think the biggest thing which I feel as a part of my career is opening up a museum.
The Cooking Utensils Museum.
I don't remember. It was, of course, dedicated to my father, but that's why it's an emotional thing. But to open up a museum for a chef, it's like it was a very expensive dream, but making that happen. And then I will say that is also connected to cooking. And of course, the status around the world that you could request people that, this is the utensils which I'm looking for. Can you please help me? And people were trying to follow up. And I think one thing which really moved me during this entire span of more than 20 years in America is the United Nations screening of Last Color. Yeah. I had Neena ji fly in from Bombay. And
that's Neena Gupta, who was the star of the film, right?
Neena Gupta. And the movie, you will have a big news about the movie in a few days. And
oh, really?
This will be like, holy God, this guy has no brain. It's like, what are you trying to do with this? But the things which we planned for years before they actually come to real life and they reach out to big audience. But at the UN, we had this woman called Heather. She runs this thing, Global Fund for Widows. And they have a massive voice in United Nations and around the world for empowerment of widows. And Mr. Sanghvi, when they came on board with the movie, you'll be surprised, the movie became like a revolution. Because I was talking about the empathy of a widow who did not live a complete life. And how if we had the system or we had the empathy to uplift these women, and we know these women are all around us, not just in ashrams, but even in our families. I have seen them. But that something happened to me where the UN people said, we need to open chapters on widows. We need to understand, we need to pass laws, we need to get to Congress. Would you support us? I'm like, I just made a movie, which was also made because of my left hand, because I was going through so many surgeries of my left hand. And the doctor said, for 1 month, you have to just do nothing to heal it. And I wrote a screenplay of a movie. And then I go to Neena Gupta ji, her house, and I begged her to act in my movie, and we got her. And I think I saw that the movies have such a deeper impact on people in storytelling.
I've got a message from Asian Society, Vikas, saying we've reached the end of our time, which is a bit sad. But I'm going to ask you a couple of audience questions, and you can give me quick answers. There's a question, I'm going to just check in the email from Raj. There's a question from Sarah Nikat saying, what made you take on the initiative? And I think the answer has to be that it wasn't a conscious thing. It was just something that came from within yourself. Feed India.
Empathy, because I felt my people like me, who were suffering at that time. And there was something we could figure out by our imagination and our networks that we could support them. And not doing this would be cheating.
Okay, one more question we can take from Rashmi Saini saying, how can I join? How can I help the Feed India initiative?
You know, people have been asking me because we didn't take any private donations of individuals. So I would always tell them that, you know, whenever I post a question on Twitter, tag the right people whom you think they will have the answers. And that is how you were the most important help I could get. Every time I do something that, you know, in this city we need support, people will tag the police officers, IA officer, government officials, local influencers, tag them because the question can reach them. And they were the ones who would join it to the real mission. And that is how this initiative became so big. So because, you know, I was very scared of the fundraising to get corrupted, because if you have one link somewhere, people replicated the links. I saw that, which happens very often. Not everybody does it, but some people do it. And that can pollute the entire system. So that's why I said, let's keep the money away from this. We don't take any money in this initiative. It is only our transactions and our deals with the brands.
No, because we're at the end of our time. We've been friends for at least 12 years now. And I've always been astonished by your successes, your essential goodness, your good nature, your willingness to help people. But I think I speak for everyone watching the show. We've never been prouder of you than we are at this moment. On behalf of all of India, thank you. Thank you so much. And for everyone who's been watching and the Asia Society, thank you so much. It's been a huge, huge coup getting Vikas Khanna, who I know doesn't talk to people, to come and talk to us. He's been very generous with his time, and I've been honored to watch this. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.